Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Welcome to the Chaos, otherwise known as the distributed work environment. And so, as you introduced me, I work with Automattic. I'm the HR lead there. We're best known for WordPress.com. And we have been distributed since day one. We were formed in the fall of 2005. And so over the past 8 years, we have grown from 4 to 217 employees. And we are all distributed. We work in 30 countries around the world. We're across 163 cities around the world. And up until very recently, the largest concentration of employees that we had in any one city was 10. And that was here in San Francisco. We recently acquired another company that doubled our numbers in San Francisco. We do have one physical space. This is our lounge. It's located actually just a couple of blocks from here. It's not an office though. It really was built as a space where we can hold technology community events as well as some company events. And occasionally, the Bay Area folks will go in there to co-work, but everyone's primary workspace is their home office. And so what are some of the pros of being distributed? Well, one is that you can hire talent wherever it resides. As I said, we have workers in 30 countries around the world, and we've been really lucky to be able to hire top talent and not require them to relocate to the Bay Area. Other pros are it affords workers incredible flexibility. And this isn't just day-to-day flexibility like, oh, I want to be with my children when they come home in the afternoon, so I'm going to start my workday earlier and finish earlier. But it's also flexibility of, oh, I have an ailing parent. I need to move to the East Coast to be their caretaker for the next 6 months, which I believe has actually increased in greater worker satisfaction as well as loyalty. But there are cons. And so I'd like to talk to you about some of the cons and then some of the things that we've done that have worked and some of the things that we have done that haven't worked, as well as take questions from you all. So what are some of the cons? Well, it's really hard to build a community when you're in 30 countries around the world and no physical locations. It's hard to gel a team if perhaps you don't ever meet them until you've been working together for 6 months or more. It's hard to build culture, and it's hard to build personal relationships. It's also hard as the HR lead to master the labor laws of 30 different countries. So, what works? The first thing that works, and it took us a while to figure this out, is we actually test for culture during the hiring process. And one of the things that's really important in our culture in particular is that we're pretty low drama. So we look for nice people. Sounds kind of silly, but it's true. And it makes a big difference. The other thing that we do is most of our communication throughout the company is online. And so our interview process is online. Most of the people that we hire, we have never met them in person. Most of the times we've never even heard their voice. Almost the entire interview process takes place by chat, either over Skype, an IRC, or on our internal blogs. The final step of our interview process is that we ask candidates to do a trial. And a trial is actually a paid 30 to 40 hour gig. It's meant to be done while you're still working full-time somewhere else, and so the trial usually lasts 4 to 6 weeks. And this is a great way for the candidate to see, hey, is this distributed thing right for me? Because for some people it's not. They think it is, and then once they start actually doing it, they're like, oh, you know what? I actually miss going into an office day to day. And that's great. That's what the trial is meant to test for. Is this something that you would actually like doing as well as be productive? So then, after they've passed the trial successfully and they're hired, one of the first things that we do is actually help them set up a space, which sounds kind of funny for a distributed company, but we feel like it is really important that people need to be inspired in the space where they work. So we've worked with an ergonomic consultant who's willing to do video ergonomic consultations through Skype and willing to work really odd hours and recommend how people can set up their workplace. We provide people the equipment that they need. So we provide them, the necessities like a computer and a monitor, but then we also give them a $2,000 allowance and say, set up your office the way that will make you happy, the way that will make you productive. So then they're all set up. So what happens? Well, their first 3 weeks are focused on happiness. What do I mean by happiness? For us, happiness is customer support. And so everyone that joins the company, no matter what role they're in, actually spends their first 3 weeks doing customer support. And this is through email and live chat. And the reason that we do this, there's actually several reasons. One is you get to know the product pretty well if you're troubleshooting all day long. You get to know our customers. You also learn that it's okay to ask questions. We don't expect you to know everything about WordPress before you start working at Automattic. In fact, when I started working at Automattic, I had a blog on Blogger, which then became Blogspot, for about 9 years. And the week before I started at WordPress, I was like, ooh, I need to move this over. So I transferred it over. And then, my first day on the job, the founder was like, okay, are you ready to do customer support? And I'm like, but I'm HR. I'm not an engineer. And he was like, yep. I paired you up with a buddy, and you learn the product really well when you're answering questions. And we want to encourage people to reach out and to talk to other people. It's always okay to bug people. You're sitting there alone in your office. Reach out, ask questions. And it's always okay, if not even encouraged, to over-communicate. So how do we do this? We do this through something called a P2, which is a WordPress.com theme, and it looks like this. This is actually our water cooler P2, which is kind of anything off topic. And it's a place where people can post something, and then everyone else can comment and respond, and this is basically how we communicate. We don't use email. We rarely use voice. So we have these blogs. We have about 130 internal blogs. Each team has one, each special project has one, and then there's a lot of just topical ones as well. Once a year, we also get together for our all-company meetup. This was a picture of our meetup from this past year, which was held just a couple of months ago here in San Francisco. And it's so important to get together and still have that face-to-face connection. And at the meetup, it's usually a week long, and it focuses on working with people you normally don't work with. So we divide people into teams of 5 or 6 people that you don't normally work with, and we launch new features. We also like to have fun. So these are some of the things we did this year. We had a ping pong tournament that lasted into the wee hours of the morning. We went ziplining. We always do go-karting every year. And just having dinner with friends and colleagues. In addition to the all-company meetup, though, we also encourage our teams to have meetups 2 or 3 times a year. And so they get together for 4 to 7 days at a time, work face-to-face, have those brainstorming sessions, build those personal relations, and then go back. Here are some pictures of our teams that had meetups over the past year. We also have learn-ups, which is where anyone can say, hey, I want to teach someone about PHP, or I want to teach someone about JavaScript. They can invite, it's usually 10 to 15 people, so it's a small group. We pay for them to go anywhere in the world, get together for a few days, and really have intensive learning sessions. And then we also encourage our employees to go to WordCamps, which are community-organized events all around the world that focus on WordPress development. So what doesn't work? One thing that doesn't work, at least for us, is saying we're going to be distributed so that we can save money, because we're not going to have an office. Our travel budget is huge. It's probably more than an office budget would be. The other thing that doesn't work is that we've had some people that join the company and they're really focused on how much time are you online. I want to see you online from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that's not our culture. I think that also defeats one of the nice pros about being distributed is the flexibility that's built into it. Other things don't work is trying to have a one-size-fits-all philosophy, particularly if you're working all around the world, and that I feel at times like I'm actually managing 217 individual companies that really addressing their needs and what they need to be productive and effective in the workplace. So that's what we've done. Would love to hear your questions and any thoughts that you have.
Oh, sorry, I have one. I think
Thanks.
When you were talking about people being focused on time online, so that somebody looking at how long they're working is what I'm hearing. Is it colleagues, is it managers? So talk a little bit more about that piece and where it came from, and if you could comment more on that, it'd be great.
Yeah, it's from both, truthfully. We have a pretty flat structure. We do have team leads, but they're not really traditional managers. We're pretty flat. But people who come into the organization, it's mostly with trials, so not people that we've actually hired, but they're like, well, I expected him to be online from 9 to 5. And it's like, well, as long as people are committing code and getting their job done, like that's really what we're looking at as the measure of success, rather than how much time we can see you. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
Glenn Dirks, you brought up a very interesting similar situation about 6 or 7 years ago. Sun bought a company called MySQL.
Yes.
And with another HR partner, we did some extensive research on how they were so successful. The pattern that you described is identical. They had spent huge amounts of money on travel. They had 400 employees, mostly software engineers in 30 different countries. The philosophy was hire the talent where it exists, leave it there. They had no corporate headquarters, no physical corporate headquarters. The whole idea of these planned events, they spent a significant amount of time planning their events, paid for travel when it was necessary. The rest of the time they worked in their individual locations. Very successful model.
And that's basically what we're doing. And I should have said that the majority of our workforce are software developers. So they are engineers as well.
Can you talk a little bit about your growth forecasts or aspirations? Where to from here?
Sure. It's really interesting because a couple of years ago we had an employee from Microsoft come and work with us for a year. And one of the things he was doing was researching a book about what's it like to work in a distributed environment. And that book was released a couple of months ago. It's called A Year Without Pants by Scott Birkin. And it is a very true snapshot of what it was like to work at Automattic a year and a half ago. When he wrote the book, we had 60 people. We now have 217. We're looking to hire another 150 next year. So we are on a tremendous growth curve. Anton?
Thanks. Hey, so as you're growing, are you finding the ability to track all these conversations? If I understand how Automattic works correctly, you never delete conversation threads. Anyone in the company can see any conversation thread.
Almost.
Almost. So, aha. So, as you get to 200, 300, 400 people, how do you see that evolving? How are people going to just kind of stay abreast of what's happening?
That's a great question, and something that has actually come up a lot with our newer employees. And when he said that you can have access to any conversation, that is true with one exception. I have a private P2 that has all the employee contracts and compensation information that only the founder and CFO and I have access to. Everything else, though, is open to everyone. It's great for historical knowledge because it's all searchable, it's all there. One thing that new employees say, though, is, oh my God, I spend my whole day reading 130 P2s. How do I get my work done? Well, the answer is you don't read all 130. You pick the ones that are important, like maybe the all-company one, your team one, a couple that are just a personal interest. Follow those. We have one that's called Thursday Updates. It's basically every week. Each team lead posts a summary of what their team has done. That's a great one to follow. And so we really encourage people, less is more. Don't try to take everything in. Okay.
You want to say goodbye? Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate speaking to you, and we're hiring.